Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also on BrightShine, right here in the city of Memphis, in the county of Shelby, in the state of Tennessee. Today's date, Sunday afternoon, October the 5th, 2025. The time 3:50 p.m. First, I thank my family, my support for you. Continue to support, continue to keep myself employed in the Memphis tri-state area, and continue to further my education. Studying business administration, contract and marketing. I took a break from going to school. I do intend to go back to school and continue to further my education by studying business administration, contract and marketing, and earn my associate degree as well as other degrees. Now, I'm going to start my Facebook Live. Hello, everybody. My name is Eric D. Johnson, also on the BrightShine. I live right here in the city of Memphis, in the county of Shelby, state of Tennessee. Today's date, Sunday afternoon, October the 5th, 2025. And the time, 3:51 p.m. First, say thank you to my family, my support for you, continue to support. I'll continue to keep myself employed in the Memphis tri-state area and continue to further my education. By studying business administration, contract and marketing, earning my associate degree in business administration, contract and marketing. And I do intend to go back to school and continue to study business administration, contract and marketing, and earn my associate degree as well as other degrees. Now, like I said, it's Sunday afternoon. Let me see what time. Now my time on my laptop is about a minute off. Yeah, my time on my laptop. But make my video gonna continue to emphasize prehistoric religion. Traditional, ancient African religion, indefinitely, and continue to focus on the branches of science, formal sciences, natural sciences, and social sciences. And in all those branches of science, you have math. Don't overlook math. There are books in the library on prehistoric religion as well as on traditional, ancient African religion. Now, again, prehistoric religion is the religious practice of prehistoric cultures. Prehistory, the period before written records, makes up the bulk of human experience. Over 99% of human experience occurred during the Paleolithic period alone. And prehistoric cultures span the globe and exist for over 2.5 million years. Their religious practices were many and varied, and the study of them is difficult due to the lack of written records describing the details of their faith. The cognitive capacity for religion likely first emerged in Homo sapiens sapiens, or anatomically modern humans, although some scholars posit the existence of Neanderthal religion and sparse evidence exists for earlier ritual practice. Excludes sparse and controversial evidence in the Middle Paleolithic, that's around 300,000 to 50,000 years ago. Religion emerged with certainty in the Upper Paleolithic, around 50,000 years ago. Upper Paleolithic religion was possibly shamanic, oriented around the phenomenon of special spiritual leaders entering trance states to receive esoteric spiritual knowledge. These practices are extrapolated based on the rich and complex body of art left behind by Paleolithic artists, particularly the elaborate cave art and the enigmatic Venus figurines they produce. The Neolithic Revolution, which established agriculture as a dominant lifestyle, occurred around 12,000 BC and ushered in the Neolithic. Neolithic society grew hierarchical and inegalitarian compared to its Paleolithic forebears, and their religious practices likely changed to suit. Neolithic religion may have become more structural and centralized than in the Paleolithic, and possibly engaged in ancestral worship, both of one's individual ancestors and of the ancestors of entire groups, tribes, and settlements. One famous feature of Neolithic religion were the stone circles of the British Isles, of which the best known today is Stonehenge. A particularly well-known area of late Neolithic through Chalcolithic religion is Proto-Indo-European mythology, the religion of the people who first spoke the Proto-Indo-European language, which has been partially reconstructed through shared religious elements between early Indo-European language speakers. The Bronze Age and Iron Age religions are understood in part through archaeological records, but also more so than Paleolithic and Neolithic through written records. Some societies had writing in these ages and were able to describe those which did not. These eras of prehistoric religion see particular cultural focus today by modern reconstructionists, with many pagan faiths today based on the pre-Christian practices of proto-historic Bronze and Iron Age societies. Now, cognitive, of relating to or being conscious intellectual activity as thinking, remembering, reasoning, or using language. Cognitive. Cognition, the process of gaining knowledge through thought, experience, and the senses. Cognition. Cognition, the process of gaining knowledge through thought, experience, and the senses. Cognition. Now, artificial intelligence overview. Cognition. Cognition refers to the mental process the brain uses to acquire, store, and process information, enabling functions like thinking, learning, memory, and perception. It involves activities such as paying attention, making decisions, and understanding language to make sense of the world and gain knowledge. Cognitive health involves maintaining these mental processes through physical and mental activities, social engagement, and managing underlying health issues. Key aspects of cognition: perception, interpreting sensory information from the environment such as seeing or hearing. Attention, focusing on specific information while filtering out distractions. Memory, the ability to retain, store, and retrieve information. Learning, the process of acquiring new knowledge and skills. Thinking, manipulating ideas, concepts, and mental representations to reason, solve problems, and make decisions. Language. Processing and using language to communicate and understand others. Cognitive function and health. Cognitive function is how well these cognitive processes work. Maintaining cognitive health involves keeping the mind engaged through activities, staying socially connected, and taking care of physical health. Cognitive issues can manifest as difficulties with memory, language, and judgment. Why is cognition important? Cognition is fundamental to human experience, allowing us to interpret our surroundings, form relationships, and make decisions. It is a complex system of interacting skills that collectively enable individuals to function in daily life and develop into healthy adults. Cognition. This is Wikipedia. Okay, time. Now, what we just went over, we had, of course, cognition and cognitive, and prehistoric religion, prehistory. And then when you're talking about the Paleolithic, the lower Paleolithic, the middle Paleolithic, and upper Paleolithic. Now, time. All right, the branches of science, form of science. Natural sciences. Social sciences. Okay, so when it comes to the form of sciences and math, math is a form of science. So, but we are here when you go to the other form of sciences like crypto system, cryptography. Some of the math in cryptography are as a crypto system. The life sciences. Now you have here a list of life sciences. Mathematical and theoretical biology. mathematical chemistry. Mathematics for physics. Social science. Business mathematics. Time. Deep time. Space time. plank units. The origin of life. Abiogenesis. The history of life. The timeline of life. human evolution. The timeline of human evolution. All right, we still on prehistoric religion. Now, the background, prehistory. Is the period in human history before written records. The lack of written evidence demands the use of archaeological evidence, which makes it difficult to extrapolate conclusive statements about religious belief. Much of the study of prehistoric religion is based on inferences from historic, textual, and ethnographic evidence. For example, analogies between the religion of Paleolithic and modern hunter-gatherer societies. The usefulness of analogy in archaeological reasoning is theoretically complex and contested, but in the context of prehistoric religion can be strengthened by circumstantial evidence. For instance, it has been observed that red ochre was significant to many prehistoric societies and to modern hunter-gatherers. Religion exists in all known human societies, but the study of prehistoric religion was only popularized around the end of the 19th century. A founder effect in prehistoric archaeology, a field pioneered by 19th century secular humanists who found religion a threat to their evolution-based field of study, may have impeded the early attribution of a religious motive to prehistoric humans. Prehistoric religion differs from the religious format known to most 21st century commentators, based around orthodox belief and scriptural study. Rather, prehistoric religion, like later hunter-gatherer religion, possibly drew from shamanism and ecstatic experience, as well as animism. though analysis indicate animism may have emerged earlier. Though the nature of prehistoric religion is so speculative, the evidence left in the archaeological record is strongly suggestive of a visionary framework where faith is practiced through entering trances, personal experience with deities, and other hallmarks of shamanism. To the point of some authors suggesting, in the words of archaeologist of shamanism Neil Price, that these tendencies and techniques are in some way hardwired into the human mind. Now, human evolution. The question of when religion emerged in the evolving psyche has sparked the curiosity of paleontologists for decades. On the whole, neither the archaeological record nor the current understanding of how human intelligence evolved suggests early hominins had the cognitive capacity for spiritual belief. Religion was certainly present during the Upper Paleolithic period, dating to about 50,000 years through 12,000 years ago, while religion in the Lower and Middle Paleolithic belongs to the realm of legend. In early research, Australopithecus, the first hominins to emerge in the fossil record, were thought to have sophisticated hunting patterns. These hunting patterns were extrapolated from those of modern hunter-gatherers, and in turn anthropologists and archaeologists pattern matched Australopithecus and peers to the complex ritual surrounding such hunts. These assumptions were later disproved, and evidence suggesting Australopithecus and peers were capable of using tools such as fire were deemed coincidental. For several decades, prehistoricists' consensus has opposed the idea of an Australopithecus faith. The first evidence of ritual emerges in the hominin genus Homo, which emerged between 2.3 million years ago and includes modern humans, their ancestors, and closer relatives. The exact question of when ritual shaped shaded into religious faith evades simple answer. The lower and middle Paleolithic periods, dominated by early Homo hominins, were an extraordinarily long period, from the emergence of Homo until 50,000 years before the present, of apparent cultural stability. No serious evidence for religious practice exists amongst Homo habilis, the first hominin to use tools. The picture complicates as Homo erectus emerges. Homo erectus was the point where hominins seem to have developed an appreciation for ritual. The intellectual ability to stem aggression of the kind seen in modern chimpanzees, and a sense of moral responsibility though the emergence of ritual in Homo erectus should not be understood as the full flowering of religious capacity, it marked a qualitative and quantitative change to its forebears, an area of particular scholarly interest. Is the evidence base for cannibalism and ritual mutilation amongst Homo erectus. Skulls found in Java and at the Chinese Zhao Kodian archaeological site bear evidence of tampering with the brain case of the skull. In ways thought to correspond to removing the brain for cannibalistic purposes. As observed in hunter-gatherers, perhaps more tellingly in those sites and others, a number of Homo erectus skulls show signs suggesting that the skin and flesh was cut away from the skull in predetermined patterns. These patterns, unlikely to occur by coincidence, are associated in turn with ritual. The lineage leading to anatomically modern humans originated around 500,000 years before the present day. Modern humans are classified taxonomically as Homo sapiens. This classification is controversial as it goes against traditional subspecies classifications. No other hominins have been treated as uncontroversial members of Homo sapiens. The 2003 description of Homo sapiens adaptu drew attention as a relatively clear case of a Homo sapiens subspecies, but was disputed by authors such as Chris Stringer. Neanderthals in particular pose a taxonomic problem. The classification of Neanderthals, a close relative of anatomically modern humans, as Homo neanderthalensis or Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, is a decades-long matter of dispute. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens sapiens were able to interbreed, a trait associated with membership in the same species, and around 2% of the modern human genome is composed of Neanderthal DNA. However, strong negative selection existed against the direct offspring of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens sapiens, consistent with the reduced fertility seen in hybrid species such as mules. This has been used as recent argument against the classification of Neanderthals as a Homo sapiens subspecies. The study of Neanderthal ritual as proxy and preface for religion revolves around death and burial rites. The first undisputed burials, approximately 150,000 years ago, were performed by Neanderthals. The limits of the archaeological record stymie extrapolation from burial to funeral rites, though evidence of grave goods and unusual markings on bones suggest funerary practices. In addition to funerals, and growing evidence base suggests Neanderthals made use of bodily ornamentation through pigments, feathers, and even claws. As such, ornamentation is not preserved in the archaeological record. It is understood only by comparison to modern hunter-gatherers, where it often corresponds to rituals of spiritual significance. Unlike Homo sapiens sapiens, over equivalent period, Neanderthal society as preserved in the archaeological record is one of remarkable stability, with little change in tool design over hundreds of thousands of years. Neanderthal cognition is backfilled from genetic and skeletal evidence. Is thought rigid and simplistic. Correspond rigid and simplistic compared to that of contemporary, let alone modern Homo sapiens sapiens. By extension, Neanderthal ritual is speculated to have been a teaching mechanism that resulted in an unchanging culture by embedding a learning style where orthopraxy dominated in thought, life, and culture. This is contrasted with prehistoric Homo sapiens sapiens religious ritual, which is understood as an extension of art, culture, and intellectual curiosity. Archaeologists such as Brian Hayden interpret Neanderthal burial as suggestive of both belief in an afterlife and of ancestor worship. Hayden also interprets Neanderthals as engaging in bear worship, a hypothesis driven by the common finding of cave bear remains around Neanderthal habitats, and by the frequency of such worship amongst cold-dwelling hunter-gatherer societies. Cave excavations throughout the 20th century found copious bear remains in and around Neanderthal habitats. Including stacked skulls, bare bones around human graves, and patterns of skeletal remains consistent with animal skin displays. Other archaeologists such as Aina Woon find the evidence for the bear cult unconvincing. Woon interprets Neanderthals as a pre-religious people, and the presence of bear remains around Neanderthal habitat as a coincidental association, as cave bears by their nature dwell in caves. Their bones should be expected to be found there. The broader archaeological evidence overall suggests that bear worship was not a major factor of Paleolithic religion. In recent years, genetic and neurological research has expanded the study of the emergence of religion. In 2018, the Cultural anthropologist Margaret Boone Rappaport published her analysis of the sensory, neurological, and genetic differences between the great apes, Neanderthals, Homo sapiens sapiens, and Homo sapiens identical. She interprets the Homo sapiens sapiens brain and genome as having a unique capacity for religion through characteristics such as expanded parietal lobes, greater cognitive flexibility, and an unusually broad capacity for both altruism and aggression. In Rappaport's framework, only Homo sapiens sapiens of the hominids is capable of religion for much of the same reason as the tools and artworks of prehistoric Homo sapiens sapiens are finer and more detailed than those of their Neanderthal contemporaries. All are products of a unique cognition. Now, when we was over here on the Paleolithic last week, I stopped off at Paleolithic people. So we're gonna go back over there to Paleolithic, and we down here where it says Paleolithic people. Literally all of our knowledge of Paleolithic people and way of life comes from archaeology and ethnographic comparisons to modern hunter-gatherer cultures such as the Kong San, who lived similarly to their Paleolithic predecessors. The economy of a typical Paleolithic society was a hunter-gatherer economy. Humans hunted wild animals for meat and gathered food, firewood, and materials for their tools, clothes, or shelters. The population density was very low, around only 0.4 inhabitants per square kilometer. This was most likely due to low body fat, infanticide, high levels of physical activity among women, late weaning of infants, and a nomadic lifestyle. In addition, even a large area of land could not support many people without being actively farmed. Food was difficult to come by, and so groups were prevented from growing too large by the amount of food they could gather. Like contemporary hunter-gatherers, Paleolithic humans enjoyed an abundance of leisure time unparalleled in both Neolithic farming societies and modern industrial society. At the end of the Paleolithic, specifically the Middle or Upper Paleolithic, people began to produce works of art such as cave paintings, rock art, and jewelry, and began to engage in religious behavior such as burials and rituals. Okay. Now, made my video for today. I'm gonna get ready to end today's video. Again, my name is Eric D. Johnson, also known as BrightShine, right here in the city of Memphis and the county of Shelby, the state of Tennessee. Thank all my fans, my support for your continued courage and support. And thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the Son of God, for all the blessings and guidance He provides all with. And continue to pray about these natural disasters. And continue to pray about wars that are being fought for peace. Pray for peace. And like I said, pray about these natural disasters that my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ help us to learn how to survive natural disasters. And not just survive, but prevent us as humans from suffering from these natural disasters. And so, let's continue to pray. And come back on my next video. We're going to pick up where we left off. And where we on. Well, I left Paleolithic. Okay, the Paleolithic. And we just got to read Paleolithic people. Yeah, we were reading about Paleolithic, and we was down here where it said the Paleolithic people. Next is going to be Homo erectus. Let me clear this out. Clear that out. And so, like I said, we're going to come back on my next video. We're going to pick up where we left off. We're going to be on prehistoric religion, traditional, ancient African religion, indefinitely. Now, like I always say, you know, if there's a need to refer back to a lot of subjects that we didn't went over when pertaining to religion, for example, like Gnosticism, as we know, the scientists all over the world, the colleges and universities all over this earth, on this globe, on this planet, they cannot find the origin of Gnosticism. So don't bring it up. You know, whatever piece of paper they found in the ground or whatever, they made their junk up. Just like possibly polytheism. Fake polytheism, you know, this false polytheism. So, if we got to go back over it, so be it. But what's it? This is October, and so like I said, I know I've been mentioning when it pertains to like entertainment and music and things of this nature, and with the intention of getting involved in, you know, being music and other forms of entertainment, but this is a time when, you know, when you go through the process of informing, just, you know, being informative, and then from that point on, you know, we move to the next stage, you know, actually bringing it into existence. But like I said, you know, doing when I'm not at work. When I'm not at work, you know, watch television a lot. You know, you learn. You know, television. You know, can, you know, be motivational. You know, YouTube videos, social media, and all this stuff can be motivational, as well as, of course, the radio. And so, take advantage of, you know, technology that's available, you know, and because as you know, it hadn't always been sheet music. Hadn't always been records to record. It ain't always been. But you had instruments, so people would just, you know, folk music. People would just go around. I don't just say people went around, but you know, because a lot of people was lived a settled lifestyle. They just, wherever they live, that's where they live. And then some people from those locations would move around, whatever, and they would take their culture and customs with them. And part of their culture and custom was music. However they made music, whether it was singing, you know, your voice, or in addition to singing, voice, some type of instrument. And instruments were, you know, a variety. Some instruments can be made from animals, body parts. And so, you know, for example, a horn, an animal's horn that they use for defense and offense. You can blow in a horn. Or you can, you know, take an animal's skin and make an instrument out of it. For example, a drum. So, you know, things like that. You know, so when it comes to music and things, and they just continue to be informative, and it's time to go, you know, go move to the next stage. You know, which is a good thing. If you don't know be informed as myself as well as others, then things not gonna come out the way it's supposed to, because you was too much in a hurry and you really just didn't, you know, have the goal of like a long term. It was mostly short term, momentary, I guess, success, I guess. But when you're thinking not just at the moment, but you're thinking building a long term, then that's when taking advantage of information is a good idea. You know, as I said earlier, you know, at the very, you know, a lot of people in the past, they didn't have access to education. They would, you know, first of all, being a descendant of slaves whose ancestors were sub-Saharan African, who survived, you know, the East African slave trade or the Arab slave trade, and the West African slave trade or the transatlantic slave trade. The culture and customs of the people. Can't say that people were not educated. That what you can't never say. The first slaves who came over can't be said as being uneducated, because people before had culture and customs, and once the people were brought from Africa and were settled here in America, the slave master deliberately, intentionally denied education to the slaves. So all that culture and custom was gone. And so what culture and custom was passed down from those original slaves who came from Africa, and the culture and custom that they knew, they tried to pass it down from one generation to the next. And one of those, music and dance, singing, was passed down from one generation to the next. And so that being education, but formal education, what we say today, formal education, was denied to Black/African Americans. So what you call music, like ragtime or the blues, jazz, and then subgenres of those types of music. And so being informed, continue just to inform myself as well as, and when that move to the next stage. And so I'm getting ready to end today's video. And so I'm gonna come back on my next video. What time is it? Yeah, my clock is off. But I'm gonna come back on my next video. We're gonna pick up right where we left off, and then, before I leave, I'm just gonna say, I still be listening to the radio too, and which is the right thing, like I've been saying all the time, listening to WDIA, I did the 87.7 right on radio, even gospel stations, Hallelujah, what's the other? It be on AM and FM, WLOK. Sometimes you can find on the FM station, which is 10, what is it? Oh yeah, FM 105 or AM 1340 WLOK, which is a family-owned station, first black-owned radio station. Sometimes I'll be over there listening and things of the nature. And of course, we got all this. It's by the time me go ahead and end today's video. But I'm gonna come back on my next video. We're gonna pick up right where we left off. So take care of yourself. Wish each and every one the very best.